everyone, welcome back to part 2 of our program featuring the Wayne County Museum located in Waynesboro, Tennessee. We've had a great time so far meeting some of the local musicians and family members that have exhibits at the museum. Everyone has been great and the museum staff have been awesome. Now you probably recognize a little bit of that Johnny Cash riff in there I just played. And we're about to meet someone that actually had an opportunity to play with Johnny Cash at one point, Eddie Thompson. But first, Eddie's going to tell us about a special violin that his uncle made that's on exhibit at the museum. And later, he's going to tell us about a couple of bands that he was in back in the 1960s, and they were so good they won a contest to open for Johnny Cash. And I thought seeing Johnny Cash as my first concert I've ever attended was special. So come along with me. We're about ready to take a drive back up to Courthouse Square to the Wayne County Museum on this episode of History and Relics. Alright, now that we're inside the museum, let's get things kicked off with Mr. Eddie Thompson, who's going to talk to us about his Uncle John's special violin and the great story behind it.
Okay, this is a handcrafted violin that was made by my Uncle John Thompson of Eagle Creek community in Wayne County, down near Clifton. And he made several of these during his lifetime. And, one such violin is in the Ronald Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California. And he's written has some literature, he's written Knowledge from Nature, made things like People in a Bottle, just stuff like that. He was just real handy with stuff like that. So his picture is right over here. You can see him on the left. That's my dad on the right. This is during World War II. And they had a little band, and that picture was probably made about 1943 or 44. Actually, it probably made after that, because he was overseas then, so it could have been about 1945 before he got out of the Army.
And then this is a picture of him later years, right? With
this
actual one, right?
Yeah, with that actual violin there.
Okay. Now, how did he come about making one for Ronald Reagan and the Reagan line?
He was always a strong Republican, and he would write letters and stay in touch. And he had written a letter, I think, to someone about the violin, and they wanted to see it, and he sent it up there, and they liked it well enough to put it in the library up there.
Awesome.
So he made several in his lifetime.
Yeah, you said you had the 33 and 30 something? Or also? My brother does. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Now let's hear from Dean Stegall as she talks about her husband's grandfather, John Kelly Stegall, and a violin that he once had.
The violin belonged to my husband's grandfather, and his name was John Kelly Stegall, and we think it's at least 125 years old. John would sit by the fireplace at night playing the violin for his family. He always said that he could not hit the high notes like Fiddlin' John or the man John Turnbow could. The violin was found in very poor condition and was taken to Mr. John Thompson to repair. And with his craftsmanship, it was repaired and it's back to its original shape like that.
Very nice. All right, we're going to swing back around to Eddie Thompson, who's going to tell us a little bit about the garage bands of the 1960s from the Wayne County area, including a couple that he was in. One of them called the Ravens, that won an opportunity to play with none other than Johnny Cash.
This is just some of the early rock and roll groups from Wayne County, starting, in the early 60s, mid 60s. And the first group here, Missing Links, they probably a mid 60s group. They had a record out called Hang Around, and it was good enough to make it to the American Bandstand label record. And they also own that album back there, Killer Cuts from the 60s. And I guess they played together, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I guess. Their keyboard player ended up playing with me in my band. And we both got drafted. He went to the Marines and I went to the Army. And we both ended up in Vietnam. So that was kind of the end of that band. And coming over to the middle there, that picture there is a modern picture of me playing. That's me in the middle. Band of Brothers is the band I play in now. And on over to the left, the Ravens, that was a group that my brother and I started. Probably about 65, somewhere around there. And we got a lot of literature on the band. There's a picture when we won the talent contest in Waynesboro. We got to go to Jackson, Tennessee and play on their cerebral palsy telethon where we met Johnny Cash. Got to play on stage with him and got to go to the Grand Ole Opry. Got a free trip up there for winning that. And on over to the left of it there, a record we made called Just Like a Hornet. It's a collector's item today, like these other records, going on eBay for $200 to $300, a real rare record. And we also came out on an album, Back from the Grave, Volume 8, Garage Bands of the 60s. And then all the way over is the Ravens. That was actually the second Ravens group we had. We added a couple members. And like I said, we played together about 3 years before I was drafted. That's me all the way on the left at the bottom. Okay. And then Caldwell Davis Jr. upper right, far right side, standing up there. He played over with the Missing Links. He was drafted by the Marines, and I was drafted by the Army. So that was kind of the end of that band. We were in the military for 2 years. Okay. But we got together in later years, me and Caldwell Davis there, and started a band called Retro. I don't have any pictures of Retro in here, but we played together about 6 years, I guess.
Next up, we talk with Ronald Tripp, who's going to tell us about playing with Harold Ray with the Mystics, another great garage band of the 60s.
Well, this record right here was Harold Ray's. It's called the Mystics. Jamie Fraser played the lead guitar. There's no house right over here by Pope up on the hill there. Jamie's sitting up on the front porch. Started picking out that. Started picking out and just kept on picking it. We just kept on messing with it, and it turned out to be Dream Dust, which I think is the best one on that song. But Harold Ray did a good job on singing.
Yeah, really, it's a good record.
Yeah.
It really is.
And we played it at Summertown at The Palomino Affair, what was the name of it?
What?
Palomino Club?
No, it was
Ponderosa?
Ponderosa.
Yeah.
And then that little wee place, and they toured out 2 times while I was there. And the guy produced it, that owned the club. And I went to Crockett Studio, made that, and it's Harold A. and me,
and this past year.
Jamie Frazier, and had a John's boy from Waynesboro. I can't remember his first name now. He played the drums. And I was down in Florence one day, and they was playing that on the radio down there. Yeah. And I feel good. They played it on jukeboxes here.
Yeah. Had it on jukebox.
At Shoe Factory, I think he played it down there.
Yeah.
But Jamie, he had polio, and
Yeah,
he could walk. He had braces. He got to walk around, you know, get around. And I think he was one of the best pickers and singers.
Yeah, he was. He really was. You remember him?
It's a talent
Jamie
contest.
Frazier.
Oh,
We also went by Eddie Frazier.
Jamie,
Yeah, I know the
we
name.
won second place before we got out of high school. Jamie sang, and I think the mayor's daughter won it. She sung an opera song.
Okay.
And I remember the controversy of Jamie sang that he didn't win.
Yeah.
I was upset because he didn't win.
Yeah.
You know, but I just played the guitar with Jamie then. I was playing bass on that record there.
You know, it's not all music at the Wayne County Museum. In fact, as you've heard and seen, Eddie Thompson and Ronald Tripp are both Army veterans. And there's a lot of other historically significant items here at the museum as well. Items that represent nearly every war. Eddie Thompson and Floyd Staggs are going to share with you now a few of the museum's wartime artifacts.
Harvey Brewer from Collingwood. That was his uniform in World War I. And he was an ambulance driver. His wife and my mom were half sisters. World War I.
Now you happen to know some of these other folks in their uniforms
You
too.
probably
Okay.
know the Navy man.
Okay, the Navy man, Mr. Carly McCutcheons. I was a neighbor to him. And he passed away. He was World War II. When he passed away, I went to his sister. Mr. Carly had told me he still had his uniform. So I went to his sister, and she said, yes, we have that uniform. And I told her what we was going to do, and she said, you can take it and use that uniform. And I said, we're going to put it on a mannequin and everything. So there it is, Mr. Carly McCutcheons.
And that's actually him wearing
That's
that.
actually him.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a neighbor to him.
And the Women's Army Corps, I'm not sure. Did you know her?
65, no, she, yeah. No, Marie,
Okay.
1965.
yeah.
You're probably related to
Yeah.
Staggs. The Army.
I'm kin to this man right here.
World
Are
War
you?
II.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Lonnie Staggs, so I knew that he had his uniform, wore it home, got his big old top coat and all that stuff. I asked him about using his uniform. They said, yes, you'd be glad to let you have it and everything. Said, Daddy'd be proud to see that uniform on a mannequin. So, Lonnie Staggs.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I see he's got a bronze star there. I got one of those.
Yeah, World War II.
Ethel Copeland, I know him, but I don't know a lot about his service.
These are amazing uniforms and they're so well preserved.
That's amazing. Mr. Pat Warren, Mr. Pat Warren was a Pearl Harbor survivor.
He was on the West Virginia
And,
battleship.
Battleship, West Virginia.
Yep.
and like I said, when he passed away, I bought a bunch of old car tags. And there's one of his Pearl Harbor survivor car tags in that group. I used to drive him to the Veterans Hospital off and on. And I'd always get him to tell me about when being at Pearl Harbor when it was hit. He said he was down in the hole and they heard a racket going on. So he went up and the bullets were just flying, hitting that steel back bulkheads and everything. He said, I could see that jock as he flew by and see his eyes and everything, that plane. He said, I went back down, and I told him, said, boys, this is for real. This ain't just a plaything. This is a real thing.
Right across the street from the museum is Veterans Plaza, where a grand monument stands honoring those who have served in World War II and is dedicated to those who gave the ultimate sacrifice and did not make it home. And if you take a stroll just a few feet away from the monument and closer to the front of the courthouse, you'll come upon the beginnings of Waynesboro's very own Walk of Fame, sponsored by the museum. The Walk of Fame honors those in the surrounding communities that have made an impact in the music industry. You'll see Neil Jones, who was a disc jockey and a Columbia recording artist, and Ralph Davis of the Davis Brothers that Kenneth, his brother, spoke to us about in part 1 of our program. Earl Peanut Montgomery is the third person you'll come across on the Walk of Fame. The Montgomery family was filled with talent. Earl wrote dozens of songs, especially for George Jones. A couple include Where the Grass Won't Grow and We're Gonna Hold On. Earl's brother, Carl Montgomery, was the co-writer on the song 6 Days on the Road. And their sister, Melba Montgomery, performed often with George Jones and had several hits of her own, including Don't Keep Me Lonely Too Long and No Charge. The Wayne County Museum has a little bit of everything, doesn't it? From music to military and even Hollywood. This is Taylor Lacker, who was born in Pittsburgh, Kansas in 1942 and made his home in Killen, Alabama. He was a movie actor for over 26 years and was in more than 50 movies and TV shows, including the 1974 film Mr. Majestic, starring Charles Bronson, where he played Gene Lundy. In 1977, he played Martin French in the final chapter of Walking Tall, about nearby McNairy County Sheriff Buford Pusser. He also did bits in the Mod Squad, Starsky and Hutch, Charlie's Angels, The Incredible Hulk, Dukes of Hazzard, and the A-Team, among many others. He was a member of the Screen Actors Guild as well. He passed away in 2005 and is buried in Waynesboro along with some of his other family members. We're going to say goodbye to Hollywood for now and head back to the Old West and talk about Robert Andrew Clay Allison. Born September 2nd, 1840, or 1841 according to some sources, in Waynesboro, Tennessee. He is the fourth of 9 children, and his father was a Presbyterian minister who raised cattle and sheep for a living. He served with 2 Confederate armies beginning in 1861 and again in 1862. The Confederate States Army under Captain William Jackson's artillery battery, and the 9th Tennessee Cavalry Regiment under General Nathan Forrest. Forrest's men would later surrender in Gainesville, Alabama on May 4, 1865, right at the war's end. The men were held as prisoners of war until paroled and allowed to return home 6 days later. By January 1874, Allison began his notoriety as a gunfighter in Mexico, shooting a Chunk Colbert in the head while the two were eating dinner. Colbert's uncle and Allison quarreled and fought years earlier over a ferry ride fare, and to get even with Allison, the younger Colbert was going to take Allison out that night, but his gun got stuck under the table and Allison beat him to the draw, killing him. Asked later why he would ever accept a dinner invitation from someone he knew that might take him out, Allison replied, "Because I didn't want to send the man to hell on an empty stomach." In 1875, Allison is alleged to have led a lynch mob to kill Cruz Vega, who was suspected of murdering a Methodist reverend by the name of F.J. Tolby. The mob later found and hung Vega, and Allison would later kill Vega's uncle, Francisco Grieco, when he attempted to seek revenge against Allison. In 1876, Allison and his brother John wound up in Colorado and stopped at a local saloon, but they were told they needed to surrender their weapons first due to a town law. When the two refused, the constable, Charles Faber, deputized two men and returned to the saloon where a gunfight ensued. John Allison was struck 3 times but survived, and Clay shot the constable dead while the 2 deputies ran off. Then there's the story of an alleged confrontation with famous lawman Wyatt Earp. It's said that Allison moved to Kansas to become a cattle broker. Some say that one day he and a posse came to Dodge City looking for trouble, while still others say it was to settle an old wound from years earlier with the marshal's office surrounding the mistreatment of several cowboys working for Allison and the shooting of one of them by the name of George Hoyt. Allison was intent upon getting to the bottom of George Hoyt's killing, while forcing the Dodge City police to ease up on his friends. It's said that a mob went from saloon to saloon, and as their anger grew, so did the ire of their words and assertions, along with all the ruckus, shooting, and shouting. Knowing how rowdy these old boys could get who backed Allison, Wyatt Earp and policeman Jim Masterson, Bat Masterson's brother, began to prepare for battle. But 2 townsfolk by the name of Dick Minalty and Chalk Beeson were able to intervene and convince Allison and his gang to give up their guns, to which the gang soon dispersed and left town. Allison would later settle down, get married, and have a family. He purchased a ranch near the Pecos River crossing at the Texas-New Mexico line. Clay Allison died on July 1, 1887, in a freak accident when a wagon load of supplies he was hauling shifted, causing a bag of grain to fall. In his attempt to grab the bag, Allison fell from the wagon and with the wagon in full motion rolled over him, breaking his neck. He was 45 years old. Allison was buried the next day in Pecos Cemetery. And to think, this all started with Waynesboro in Wayne County, Tennessee. All right, let's get back to some great country music and some outstanding songwriting. So do any of you recognize this person by chance? Okay, how about if I place this person in between Travis Tritt and Marty Stewart? That's right, it's Ronnie Scaife, who wrote dozens and dozens of great country songs, including one co-wrote with Stewart called The Whiskey Ain't Workin'. The song was recorded by Tritt and Stewart and released in November 1991. It went all the way to number 2 on Billboard's country music chart. Songs Ronnie has written or co-written have been recorded by some of country's top artists, including Johnny Paycheck, Charlie McLean, Reba McEntire, Gene Watson, Alabama, Randy Travis, Garth Brooks, Conway Twitty, and Waynesboro's own Mark Colley. We spoke to Ronnie's son, Nathan, while at the museum, so let's listen in.
And I'm representing my father, Ronnie Scaife, and he was a songwriter musician. He got the Songwriter of the Year, and I believe it was 1979 in Memphis for the song Men by Charlie McLean. And that was a big hit for him, and that really kind of kick-started his career. He was also in a band named Shiloh before that even started, and they were a 3-piece band, and they played around the Southeast. A lot of, back in the day, they would play at Holiday Inn, and the big marquee would have Shiloh on it, you know, and all our silverware was from Holiday Inn, and we just, you know, had a good old time moving around and things. And he decided the band thing wasn't, he was making money at it, but he was always a man who liked to fish and hunt. And so he wanted to move to the woods out of Memphis. So we moved to Hohenwald, and here my grandparents moved to Wayne County, and we lived here, and it was hard to be in a band, so he decided to songwrite since he was always writing songs for Shiloh. And about 1986, 87, Alabama came to him and said, let's do a song called Fireworks of yours. And so they did that song, Fireworks, and everything started rolling after that. And he got the Whiskey Ain't Working. Conway Twitty did a song called Couldn't See You Leaving, and that was a number 2 hit
for him, and Dad always said he killed his career because he didn't make it to #1. That was his last hit. And so then the Whiskey Ain't Working and Bill Engvall, Here's Your Sign, Hearts Are Gonna Roll by Hal Ketchum. So he had quite a display of songs. He's from 1973, his first hit was Countryfied by Mel McDaniel, and in 2016 he had a song put out by the Crow Brothers called Living in a Mobile Home. So he spans from 73 to 2016.
Now let's stroll down the aisle and take a look at some of the great memorabilia of Mark Colley. Born George Mark Colley on January 18, 1956 in Waynesboro, he was inspired by his brother Steve's acoustic guitar that was bought by their Uncle Joe. Mark started writing songs and was influenced by the legendary Johnny Cash. While in high school, he was a DJ on local radio station WAAM and played guitar with local club bands. After high school, he traveled the world before focusing again on his music. Soon he was in Nashville, and his songwriting caught the attention of artists like Martina McBride, Marty Stewart, and Randy Travis. In 1987, he emerged from the shadows and built a more public presence that would launch his career into stardom. There are so many great items Mark has shared with the museum, including his first Nashville studio record, I've Got to Have You Back Again, recorded at Studio 19 in Nashville in 1982. This Gibson acoustic guitar was played on the video set of Something with a Ring to It, that later sold 9 million copies on Garth Brooks' album The Chase, Box Set Limited. That song was also on his debut album, Hardin County Line, in 1990. The highlight of the collection is a custom-designed stage costume by Manuel that Mark wore on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno on September 28, 1993. The photo to your left shows Jay Leno and Mark that night in 1993, with Mark wearing the very costume that is now on display at the museum for all to see. And now for the grand finale. Marvin Morrow is going to talk with us about his career in music and wrap things up for us with an outstanding contribution to the museum, his first professional model guitar, a Fender Palomino.
All right, I'm Marvin Morrow. I'm from down the south part of Wayne County. Grew up in Lauderdale County, Alabama, Waterloo, Alabama is where I grew up. But I'm originally from here in Wayne County. I've been in music just about all my life. Some of the artifacts that I have here is I brought a little old guitar that I made when I was 8 years old out of a hound can that we put in there, and that started my career in music. That was a very humble beginning, and it stayed that way all the way through. I've got a suit that my mother made me when one of my first professional suits. My mom made that for me, and that was the rage back in that day in country music. You had to have a shiny suit.
Yep, sort of like an old nudie, right?
That's right. Yep. So we had to have a shiny suit. Yeah, it's got some rhinestones on it. You just have to really get down and look at them there, where they're at back in there. And, we did that up until 1974, and I left music completely for several years, and then I came back later. I went into the ministry in 75, and then I started doing gospel music, and I did like a recording each year. I've done 26 or 27 albums in the last 20-something years.
Very nice. Very nice. And now today, you've brought us in today one of your guitars.
Actually, my first professional guitar. It was.
Your first professional one.
It's a 50-something model. I'm not even sure I bought it used.
Okay.
It's a 50-something model Fender Palomino. that I
Wow.
played all the years I was on the road doing country music. That was my main guitar.
And today you're going to we're going to lend it to the.
I'm lending it to the museum
Today.
Yes, today.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, let's take a look at it.
All right. It's in the original case that it came in. It's got battle scars.
Take a look at this. Oh, there we go.
Back of it is where, see where the belt buckle rubbed it.
Little bit, yep.
They went on to CDs.
Little bit of road wear.
Little bit of road.
Must have been early 70s.
Pick us a tune on that.
It's not playable.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
It's not tuned. This has old strings. It's been on for 30 years. It's been in storage. It's been
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful
I don't
piece.
use this guitar. I haven't used it for years.
Okay.
I used it when I first started, and then I bought a new guitar because the binding was coming off of this one so bad, and I couldn't find anybody to fix it. So I bought a new guitar, and I've used
That's awesome.
3 or 4 of them.
That's a beautiful guitar.
Well, it is. It's a classic, really.
It is.
Because there's things about this guitar that haven't been made. It has a rod all the way through it.
I was looking at
See
that.
that
Yeah.
broomstick through it?
Yeah, I was looking. I was trying to get an angle on the light there just so we can see it. Yeah, there we go. That's really interesting. That goes into the neck then, right?
Goes all the way up into, to the neck block.
Okay.
This neck actually goes on there like a electric guitar. That's just the same as electric guitar neck. It's put on with those 4 screws right there. It goes all the way up into that block.
You definitely don't see that anymore.
No.
You definitely don't see that.
That was some of the first Fender guitars that were made back in the 50s.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing and thank you for dedicating.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to leave it here at the museum. This is a good thing that they've got going here.
Oh, it is.
Because there's a lot of music tradition here in Wayne County. I didn't realize it. I'm like Staggs. I didn't realize how many people there were that were really connected to the music business until they started this thing.
Yeah.
People began to come in, from everywhere.
Start opening up cupboards and closet doors and bringing those stories back out. Yep. Well, thank you.
You're more than welcome.
What a wonderful time we had at the Wayne County Museum today. Thanks again to everyone who took time out of their day to come and speak about their memorabilia and share their stories. Thanks as well to Floyd Babe Staggs for coordinating this opportunity. It was a good time had by all. Lastly, we'd like to thank all the musicians, entertainers, singers, songwriters, and everyone in between for lending their artifacts to the museum for all to see. Without these treasures, the museum just wouldn't be. Another thing that really helps nonprofit entities like the Wayne County Museum is donations and funding. If you or a family member would like to contribute an artifact or relic to the museum, or most importantly, make an ever so needed monetary donation to help them maintain this incredible sanctuary, please consider contacting the Wayne County Museum today. Every dollar is used wisely and is greatly appreciated. I made a donation, won't you? Thank you. If you'd like to visit the museum in person, they're located at 100 Court Circle, Waynesboro, Tennessee 38485. Their mailing address is the Wayne County Museum, P.O. Box 125, Waynesboro, Tennessee 38485. And their telephone number is area code 931-722-5016. Well, folks, it's time to put the old Fender Telly back into the case and move on down the road. If you happen to miss part 1 of our program, be sure to check out History and Relics channel. And thank you, everyone, and until next time, this one's history.